what if I showed up safe today and every day? Like show up worthy, safe, loved. I have a voice. I matter, whatever those messages are, right? And that's where we get to be free and really change our lives because we're all holding on to so much stuff.
Hey, welcome. I'm Amy Woodall, and this is The Conscious Habit. And we are on a mission to help make this planet a more conscious place at home, at work, and in the world around us. So we are meeting with the greatest conscious experts in health and fitness and leadership, relationships, you name it, from around the globe that can help us do just that.
Hey, Conscious Habit listeners. So as I was prepping for our interview today, I wanted to take stock of what we are all experiencing in the world. And can we be honest that there's a lot of shit happening? It's a little bit of overload. Everywhere you look, there is some form of fear or uncertainty being thrown in our faces, and this can affect us in every aspect of our lives. It can creep into our homes and what the future might look like and the dreams that we're building. It can creep into our businesses and the uncertainty of how we're going to move through, price hikes and tariffs and shortages, etc. And in these times, I think it is incredibly important that we pay attention to what can I control? Because when we give our peace and our sanity to things outside of us that, yes, we can influence, but we cannot control, we tend to live a life of more suffering. And so our guest today, Karen Bartholomew, is the creator, the founder of the pause method. And Karen is going to help guide us through when the shit hits the fan. What can we do to not only find our sanity, but also find our people, find ourselves, find some peace within? So Karen, welcome to the Conscious Habit Podcast. I'm excited to dive in, sister.
I'm excited to be here, girl. Thank you for having me.
We got a lot to dive into. There is no shortage of places we could go in this conversation today. But, as we're diving in, I'm very curious. This pause method that you created, can you just tell us a little bit about what is the pause method? And then I'd love to dive into, listen, here's what I know. Everybody has a story. We are called to do this work because we probably... something happened for ourselves.
The pause came from my story, actually. So, yeah. So the pause method, basically, I didn't realize since 2010 that I was doing this over time when I really decided to take myself on. I just got sick of me, right? And so the pause method is really a place where people can take, legitimate steps on becoming aware of their patterns in their life, pretty much from the subconscious, as most of your listeners know about subconscious, conscious mind. And we're on autopilot. We just do things over and over again, when we learn to drive a car, right? We're like, the rearview mirror, the side mirror, and I learned on a clutch. This is my generation, and the car that's stopping and starting, and my dad that's like worried that I'm going to kill him in the passenger seat, right? So, but now we can actually drive a car and put our makeup on in the car while we're driving, right? And we can do all kinds of things, send food back to the kids or whatever, right? And it's no brainer, and sometimes show up in our driveway and not even know how we got there. So that autopilot is really our subconscious, right? From all the stories and the messages and everything that we got growing up. And then we leave the house and we try to figure out who we are. And basically, the reason what I did was I really had to go back through some help of other people and programs I took. And I just took it further than what they showed me. And I realized that I needed to understand my pattern recognition first. So I needed to ask myself, what story am I telling myself right now? Is it rooted in truth or past conditioning? And then I had to dive into that and go, well, what's past conditioning, right? And so, it's like, well, don't touch that, because, you're going to get hurt, right? So then we learn, don't ever touch that, right? Now, some things like don't touch the stove, you're going to get burnt. I mean, obviously that works, right? But even climbing on a counter and want to get in a cookie jar, right? And it's like, don't touch that. It's too high. You're going to get hurt. I know people that actually will never become a CEO because they're scared that going up on the top floor is going to be hurtful, right? Now, as we know, when you get to the top floor, yes, we have to have big backbones, right? And you need to get tough. But it's not going to hurt you, right? It's just part of life. And so that pattern recognition of what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, right? That we've pulled forward, and are they working for us or are they not working for us? So I really got to dive deep into that. And then once I did that, I actually got to really accept without any resistance or judgment of what happened, because things really happen in our past. I had tons of traumatic things happen, and I don't condone any traumatic, horrible things that happen to people, because they happen to me too. But there's evidence if I go back and go, okay, well, there's evidence there. But that's when I was 12 and 13, 14, right? Some people it's 6, 7, all through, upbringing until they leave. And so I can go back and acknowledge that that happened. And, how is that actually working for me today? Right? Like really just be gentle with yourself and say, okay, so, that message doesn't really resonate. It's not really truth. Because if I really ask questions to my clients and we find out that that's not truth today, there's a lot of women that don't feel safe when they were younger. And I'm like, but is that a truth today? Are you safe today? Right? And so really understanding that and unraveling that, right? And really helping people understand that their nervous system is very much associated with that thinking. And so if a woman doesn't feel safe, let's just say she's in her 40s and she hasn't felt really safe for 30 years carrying that around, we really get to dive deep and find out, well, what do you care? That must be exhausting, right? Carrying around, having to manipulate your world in order to feel safe. But if truly today, if you showed up today and because it's truth that you're safe today, you can see people's nervous system just literally just relax. And all of a sudden it's okay, so just take a moment, because this is something that's really difficult for people that live for 30 years not being safe and trying to manipulate their world. What would that feel like? Like right now, to know that you're safe, right? And then all of a sudden they get a glimpse of what it would feel like, right? To go, wow, that feels really free and light. And there's all kinds of words people use. But now we get to step into a different world, right? And so that's that whole, the pattern recognition, accepting without any judgment or opinions. Sometimes we do timelines for people so they can really go back and become aware of that stuff. And then basically what happens is we get to rewrite your story, which is really a huge thing, because now I don't need to live in the past. I get to live in truth moving forward, right? And then we get to actually go further with that work and then expand and practice it. Okay. So really understanding it and then really practicing it. Okay. So that's pretty much the pause method. There's more to it, obviously, but it kind of gives you an idea. But, the fact that you can ask yourself, what if I showed up safe today and every day? Show up worthy, safe, loved. I have a voice. I matter, whatever those messages are, right? And that's where we get to be free and really change our lives, because we're all holding on to so much stuff. So I just unraveled it and made a method out of it, and it's working. So, you got to keep going with what's working.
It is I think when not everyone will get here, and that is not a judgment, but it is a matter of the path that we are walking in life. Some people, and what's hard when you are doing the work is to not take it personally when other people are not, because that is their personal journey. And absolutely. I think that when we are doing this inner work, when we have this aha of oh my gosh, life isn't happening to me, it's responding to me. You mean the world I'm experiencing outside has less to do with the way that I feel, think, and I'm hardwired to respond to it within. When we have that, then we can often have, I think Eckhart Tolle called it spiritual ego. We get ourselves to a higher consciousness place, but then our ego can kick into high gear. That is if you only knew what I knew, if you were doing the work I was doing, and then we take offense or we judge people who are not there. And I feel called to share this in this moment, because I have a feeling every listener knows someone in their life that you're if you would just listen. Maybe you've sent them this podcast and you're this podcast is great. And they're that's the stupidest shit I ever heard in my life. I don't like that hippy-dippy woo-woo stuff. And so, as you're coaching people along, here's a couple of things that come to mind for me. How do you help these people who they are the ones in their life that decide they want to make change, but they are surrounded by people who don't? And does that ever become disruptive to their path, or their path of healing, their ability to pause, because they still want to blame, well, I could pause better if My husband got on board. My partner got on board. My friends, my boss. How do you help people navigate that?
Well, so here's a great Shakespeare quote that I can share with you that actually tells it all, and we can dive deeper into it. But it says, "Nothing is neither good nor bad, only thinking makes it so." So if you're saying those things, and I always say everybody has a personal genie, a personal, Aladdin, basically for men. Like, you need to be careful what you're feeling and what you're saying, because you're attracting exactly that. So if you say that your husband is blah, 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 and you're actually saying it to other people, now you're already like creating this thing about your husband, right? Or whoever it is, your boss or whoever it is, right? And it just festers. It festers and festers to the point, like it just does. I can give you an example of a woman who for some reason, I don't know, I was in a mastermind and I was asking everybody at the time, they're a room full of realtors. And I was asking them, like, what is the one thing that's holding you back from really like just, doing another, 10 deals a month or whatever it is, whatever your goal is, right? Because we're not there. So what's that one thing? And she got really offended by that. And she said, that's a really personal like question for me. And she walked out of the room. There was a room of like 15 high producing real estate agents. And so later I went to talk to her and she said that was so inappropriate. Well, because she took that and took it personal. Something else was going on with her, right? And so in that moment, she decided that I was a mean person. Because how dare you ask that question in front of all these people? And to this day, if anyone asks her what she thinks of me, she'll think I'm a mean person. She's just decided that about me. And there's no way for me to change her mind. That's just what she thinks about it. And she will always find things, anything at all. She'll look at my website. She'll look at my social media, and she'll find a way that she'll say, yep, that's mean, that's mean, that's mean. Because that's her perceiving self of how she perceives me. Not right, wrong, or indifferent in her for whatever she's thinking, but that's not who I am. So
it's an interesting, our reticular activation system is interesting, right? Of what we believe to be true, we see as true in the world. Our eyes are an extension of our thinking. Their eyes, hang on, listeners, take a drink, because we play this drinking game. Every time Amy says, the eyes see what the brain believes, they're like, oh, here she said it again. But it is true. I love that you framed it that way, Karen, of if we speak about it, we make it so. And that's not necessarily woo. Maybe it's part woo. I love a little woo.
Maybe it's a little woo. It's a little woo.
Maybe it's a little woo, but it's also, it's based on our neurological system. It's based on how the brain works.
Yes.
And not only have we created that in our own priming of our own brain, but we plant the seed in the minds of others. And now we've taught other people to see and experience that reality. And if one version can be true, the opposite can be too. And so I really appreciate that. If we're angry or frustrated, I think that is our greatest opportunity for self-reflection, because let me tell you, I have never been the best version of myself than when things are going my way. Then when everybody is acting exactly how I wish them to, I am the best version of me. I am sunshine and rainbows, and I am the most conscious being around. But let me tell you when that's tested. When all that shit isn't going my way. When people are not acting how I would like them to, etc.
Yeah.
That's probably, as you're mentioning this pause method, that is when it is most useful, not when everything is sunshine and rainbows, but when we find ourselves in likely some sort of induced suffering. That is often the case. So
that's perfectly said. What I say, it's that place between when you get triggered, right, and upset. There's this gap in between. That's where the work happens. So when we get triggered, if we could just like not spew, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself with my kids, right? But if we could not spew it, right? And like just really look at it and go, okay, why am I triggered? Is it something about me that I'm getting a mirror back in my face that I got to go, oh, I don't like that because I don't like that piece of me. And then you just got to figure out, well, what is that upsetness, right? Because typically it's not really something that's happening with that person. It's something you're pulling from your history, because we already have a library of history. So if you think about it, like, then there's some fear in there too, right? So fear is the unknown. And the only reason why we have fear is because we're pulling our history forward and we're placing it in the fear. Because really, if you think about it, we don't know what's going to happen as soon as we get off this podcast. I have no idea. So if I can live in the universe is working for me, not against me, right? And I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to go be in flow with it, right? and it is what it is, then there's really nothing to be fearful of.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
I so appreciate the study of Stoicism for that reason of
Yeah.
like creating a gap between reaction and response, but both of those require awareness. And I appreciate that that's part of your pause method is the awareness. And I want to kind of take our conversation to what we're experiencing in the world right now. I know you've been out traveling a ton. I've been traveling a ton. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter the industry or the state. It doesn't matter where I've been. There is this uncertainty that is looming. And our conversation is not about whether that's justified or not. That is not our conversation. Our
Right.
conversation is, what do we do? And so what do you think, I mean, based on your understanding of human behavior and mindset, what is it when things outside of us become so uncertain? What does it trigger within us and what can we do about it?
Yeah. So it's still, that uncertainty is still the fear of what could be. And so, just like if I asked you a question, it's like, how many times have you been completely fearful of how you imagined it to happen, right? And it actually happened that way. Like, does it ever really happen the way that we imagine it?
No, I think it's like for some of us, we think fear is a way of preparing ourselves, like I think we falsely prepare ourselves, but in truth, I think we just trade our peace for some outcome that's
We do.
never going to
That's
happen.
exactly what we do. We trade our peace and then we get all full of anxiety or whatever it is that we do, right? I mean, I have a 25-year-old daughter that has some anxiety issues, and it's all based on fear of what is the unknown. And she's fearful of the same thing that would happen before is going to happen in the future. But like, if you don't take a risk, you'll never know. So in uncertainty, there's pure possibility. And if we can live from that standpoint, that there's pure possibility, right? Then like, what do we really need to be fearful of? Like, so in certain times like today, it's like we only have control of what our mind, it's all here.
Mhm,
I call it, it's like BS thinking, right?
mhm,
So bullshit thinking, right? It's like we have to just be aware of what we're thinking, because is it truth? Is it really truth? Some of it is, but like, is that going to stop us from moving forward to what we want to move forward into? It just kind of like freezes you. And I've been in that situation before where I've been so stuck that I couldn't move.
mhm.
I had an assistant once tell me, he says, I've never seen you not be able to fix something.
Mm,
Like, I've never seen you this stuck before.
mm,
And it was perfect though. It was really crazy, and I was scared and uncertain, and I didn't know which way to move, but I knew that I was like, I'm just going to feel this. It was the best thing that I did for myself, was I'm just going to feel what's happening here right now, but I'm not going to stay there for a long period of time. I kind of give myself a timer. I'm not going to stay here for a minute. Maybe sometimes I need to stay there for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to move though, because the action is what gets us out of the fear.
mhm,
So to take a risk and just go in any direction. If it fails, it's just a lesson you're learning. You can pivot and go the other direction, right?
mhm,
So being stuck is actually a really good gift to give yourself, is how I look at it, right? To actually take some action. And when you ask me the question about how our families, it's like, it's not worrying about what your families think of the process and your journey you're going through, because they're going to see something different. I just had this conversation with my daughter yesterday morning, and I remember when she was, dating this certain individual, and I used to get so upset, like so like mentally just, right? Just wanted to strangle. And I actually took a mental break for 3 months to come to North Carolina, to my second home, which is where I am now. Because I just needed a mental break, and nobody could understand what was going on with me. And I'm like, how sometimes you just need a mental break? I'm like, I really needed to get away from the situation. I just needed to let you do your thing and get away from the situation. I learned I had to take on another pause for myself and go, I need to break free from this. And so I literally changed the way I thought about it, and I just allowed her to have her time. And she changed her communication because I changed mine. I
mhm,
changed the way that I saw things. And so we don't really need to have people come along with us if they don't understand. They're going to see a difference. It's kind of like, what's going on with you? You're really different. You're like, we're not screaming at our kids anymore. Or you're
mhm.
not, you're just getting rid of some of your friends that aren't really working for you, right? And so I never worry about that. I do have family members that never understood some of the journeys that went on. And I just was like at the point where I said, I need to have my own voice, and I need to do this for me. And that's where I always say everyone needs to invest in themselves. And even in the corporate world, take a moment to think during the day, because we never get a thinking time during our busy days in the corporate world. To really like think of like where you're going, even if it's only 10 minutes, right? Just for yourself, just to think, just strategize, do whatever you need to do. And then have people that will actually help you rise and go in that direction. That's the other thing, the community.
Ladies, imagine taking time away to work on you. Meditation, yoga, transformational work, a chance to have grand adventures and build lasting relationships. Desiree Garcia and I founded High Vibe Tribe Retreats to create just that. And if you're curious about joining us on our next retreat, head over to highvibetriberetreat.com, link in the show notes. I think you're right. We are often stuck in just the reaction. And there's times we keep ourselves so busy so that we can avoid the connecting to the thought or, the thought or the emotion. And you mentioned you allowed yourself time to feel it. I think that has been such a gift of a lesson. In my own conscious journey, I have shared this story before, but in one of our retreats was hosted in Tulum, Mexico, and I got a chance on a site visit to go have some like a massage done. And yeah, listeners, if you're just purely listening, I am using air quotes, massage. Okay. It turned out this was an exorcism with a Mayan healer who, she read me like a book. She was this, I swear she was 110 years old and had the strongest hands I've ever seen in my life. A 7th generation Mayan healer, and she got into my face. Meanwhile, I was doing this conscious work, but she called me out and she said, you have to feel your feelings. You cannot think them. And so even though I was on this conscious journey of better understanding my hardwiring, better understanding my thinking patterns, I had not yet gotten to the place where I felt my feelings in my body. I processed them in my mind. And that was so earth-shattering for me. And so for you, I think high achievers often that we are like, okay, I'm feeling something. I don't like it. How do I solve it?
Yep.
And so as part of this pause method that you're teaching, how do you help? I know women are, particularly your audience, but how do you help people learn how to connect with the emotion without becoming the emotion?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So first of all, a lot of people are out there, they're stuck and they're searching for something outside themselves, right? And they think that that's going to bring them happiness, whatever, fix the problem. But it's not really outside of yourself. It's really inside yourself. And so I really help people just to explore. That's the word we use, is explore, not searching, right? So because it's really inside of here, right? So to be able to go back, that piece of the pause method, that you're able to go back and not have any resentment or judgment of your past. It is just what it is. It was your truth when you were younger, right? And be able to acknowledge that. Maybe be able to go back and ask, this might be a little woo-woo for some of your audience, but to go back and ask the small child that was hurt, right? And still hurt to this day, to go back and what would you say to that small child, right? What'd you do? Would you take her with you? Or even if you have small children or even older children, I have adult children and I still do this. It's if they're hurt, what do? You get down and you help them, you soothe them, and you do whatever you do, right? But we forget to do that for ourselves. So we're born into this world as precious little babies. And somewhere along the line, we decided that we weren't precious anymore because we have so many accumulation of hurts over the years, right? And that's where fear comes in. You have so many accumulations that you just stay small. And you never go and you get to be this big, wonderful person, extraordinary life that we all are. So I would say really to go back, and do a timeline of everything you can remember and then acknowledge what happened. But not really there's no judgment. There's no, no resentment. There's no nothing. You just acknowledge it, from a really peaceful place. And then you can go, okay, that's what happened then. But again, where am I today? You don't stay there. right? So when you go to therapy, a lot of people just focus on the problems. And it's like, we don't really have problems unless we say they're problems, right? I like to focus on solutions, like really like releasing that stuff that's not working for us. Like, so for me as a small child, I walked around a lot of the times not being seen, heard, or held, so, and overall my message to myself was I didn't matter. So then I went out in the world and I manipulated, well, how can I make sure that I matter in this world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I stopped doing that and I really got to find my true self, then I realized that I'm already seen, heard, and I know I matter because I'm making a huge impact in this world, right? In the corporate world, in entrepreneurs, and in myself and in my family. And I've just seen changes just in my kids, just the way they are, because I explored and I decided I was going to live an extraordinary life and figure this out for myself so I can like have the next chapter and design it whatever I wanted it to be. Right. So I quit my corporate job and I became an entrepreneur.
Which I think is a great opportunity for continued spiritual awakening. I've told people like, hey, you want to really test where you are? Like, go all in on something and to go be risky. Yeah. Because again, when the ground is shaky, we really get a chance to see what we're made of. We get a chance to see what continued healing maybe needs to be done, and not in a way that like we are something that needs fixed. I really think healing to me personally is a remembering. It is not a getting to. And so I think that's, that being a business owner can be quite a gift to us getting there and being able to practice the work that, we're certainly doing in the world. I love that timeline exercise. And I think it's helpful, if we were looking back, if an emotion does come up, not to shove it down, but maybe it is like, I do feel resentment. I don't need to connect to the story with the resentment, but maybe I need to breathe and allow my body to feel it, because if not, that emotion will get stuck. And I have been so guilty of, I call it whack-a-mole with my emotions, where it's like an emotion comes up and I immediately go like, oh shit, I have so much to be grateful for. I call it whack-a-mole gratitude or whack-a-mole positivity, where it's like, but that doesn't matter. And it's like, well, if it's coming up, it's okay to honor it by being felt. What we have to be careful of is not letting the little bitch in the attic lovingly get in the way to run with a story of why that feeling's justified and why it's there. And then, kind of then if we're the victim, somebody needs to be the a-hole. And like, now, how are they to blame? Like, we don't have to get caught in it, right? But we can, I love that personal, it's kind of like personal histories exercise I've seen done in organizations for leadership development. I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, you're either, you talked about being a victim or being, versus victim versus responsible, right? I don't want to be a victim of my past and my circumstances. I want to be responsible. And responsible is like taking a look at it and I'll go, okay, so I don't like that. So like, okay, then change it. Do something different.
And there
let it lie and don't pick it up again, right?
Yeah. I think it's so helpful. Like, we are not responsible for what happens to us. Like, there's so much, we are not, there are things in our life that really genuinely suck. And it's not about not acknowledging that, but we are responsible for now what? Now what do I do with it? What's the story that comes around with me? And when, again, back to when things are uncertain in business, in life, when there's turmoil, when there's, kind of political divisiveness, how does, because I believe, my personal belief in the work I've done and do in the world is that there's really not a trigger that's planted within us, but it's detonated by experiences outside of us, right?
Yes.
And so these things that are uncertain are hitting these things within us that have already existed, right? And so I'm very curious of like, all right, if I'm listening to this podcast right now and I am feeling fearful because there is uncertainty and I know we're going to have to raise prices, I don't know how my clients are going to respond to that, I'm fearful of an economic downturn, what can I do?
So one of my mentors says, life and people will present you with places that you're not healed. It will present you with circumstances and people in your life where you were not actually free or healed. And so when something pops up for me, And I'm like, wow, or even people I've gone out with. I mean, I've been single for a long time, but even the people I was married twice. Like I look back on that and go, wow, what attracted those people? What was it about me that those people came into my life, right? You know, a strong businesswoman, independent, blah, 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 blah. And I attracted these low self-esteem men, right? I mean, that's the same thing. So you could take this example into any area of your life. But like I attracted those men because that was a place that I wasn't healed. And eventually I got out of that and I had to look at that and go, what the heck? I don't want to do that again. Now, if you don't look at that, the pattern will continue. And then we pick the same type of person. And a lot of people listening have probably done this. Same type of job.
Mm-hmm.
I literally quit a job after 2 years, saw it was great. And I saw everything that was wonderful. And I took a long time to make the decision. But after being there, it didn't take me very long to figure out that, oh, whoa, I just did it again. I'm working for another, crazy person, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then it took me 2 years to get out of fighting for me and then finally realizing it wasn't going to work. And so I left. And I left with a ton of peace. No matter what was said to me, I gave myself only 3 minutes to get out of there. I said what I had to say and I was very peaceful at it. And a lot of stuff was thrown at me and I still said, thank you, thank you. And I walked out with because I was very at peace with what I was doing and where I was going, which is why I'm doing this work now. So it's a gift. So I looked at that as that was a gift for me. That was a gift for me to see where I still needed to explore and I still wasn't healed for something. Right. And so I took another pause for a week and went to a cabin in the creek at a creek side. And I sat there with no phone or anything. Nobody could get a hold of me. And I really had to just, rewind, figure it out, unwind everything, do my pause method. I'm like, all right. And then my children were the ones, Mom, why don't you just start coaching business for yourself? I'm like, okay.
Love that they
because I was
encouraged you.
open to hear her say that, my kids were safe enough. They felt safe enough now that I was past this turmoil that they could actually bring that to me. And then I just immediately said, okay. So the pause is just a lot for a lot of different people. I mean, I started it out by just taking a walk to my mailbox, literally, just to get a moment to myself. Because I was doing the same thing you talk about, the busy, stuff it down, whack-a-mole, right? Same old thing. There's no time for that. 3 kids, single mom, trying to make it all happen, running a business, so I get that. But we have to take time for ourselves. We have to invest in ourselves, so we can become better versions and have extraordinary lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this life has so much to offer us. Whatever you want, it's out there.
It's a choose your own adventure. And I think we don't often know that like, oh, I'm choosing my adventure. So which path am I taking? It doesn't mean that we don't go through challenges. That's going to happen. Like that just is part of it. There are ups and downs, but how we respond to them certainly changes over time.
Yes.
And I think that personal history exercise that you mentioned, that's so great for us to look at if there's an area in our life that always we seem to have a pattern. Maybe it's our health. Like we feel like we've ridden a roller coaster for our health. Maybe it's our finances. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's career. Whatever feels like has been the biggest roller coaster ride for you, my gut says there's some really amazing lessons in that. Someone that I love dearly in my life would attract these positions where people did not see her worth. So she would bend over backwards, give her all to the organization, and then they would end up parting ways. And whomever she was working for just didn't see value in the work she was doing. And I fortunately, we can have people close in our lives that can be our mirror. And I said, have you ever noticed that you tend to attract these people who do not see how good you are? And that is because, do you think it's because you don't think you're good and the world is just proving it to you? When that shifts for you, you will find someone who truly values you. And you know what? People have told me things in my life and I was just probably gave them a big middle finger in my head or maybe in real life, I don't know, and didn't listen to it. But sometimes we do share the right insight at the right moment that makes an impact. And she listened to that and is now at an organization where they love her. They're like, however much money you want.
Did that.
Yeah. However much money you want, whatever you need, you are the glue. You are incredible.
That's awesome.
But I think all of us have that. Like, what is that area in our life that it holds the greatest lessons because of the roller coaster we've ridden?
Yeah, I mean, here's a good one. If someone, if you walk around saying it's too good to be true, right? It's going to reinforce that things are never going to work out for you.
Mm.
If you remember as a small child saying, don't get in trouble or be a good girl or be a good boy or whatever it is, right? We're always trying to be good no matter what we think good is for that person, which, could be a worthy thing as well, right? So, but, if you're always told not to get in trouble, you're going to attract trouble because that's what you're I mean, it's just whatever your thinking is. So it's really that timeline is just an amazing exercise. And in my coaching, what I do is I actually give people challenges. I don't give them homework.
Mm.
I don't believe in homework, but I give them challenges, like where they're stuck. And I'm like, okay, so, and it's a lot of it's woo-woo stuff. Like sometimes people just need to go out and give some acts of kindness today. Just go give 5 acts of kindness, right? Let's see how you show up in the world, right? I remember a long time ago in 2010, somebody had me, this was so crazy, had me go out in front of Walmart with a sign that said free hugs.
Mm.
It was the hardest thing just to get out of my car and then to stand out there right after work because I was, in heels and whatever. And then I was sitting next to a guy doing mission work, trying to get donations, right? And it was interesting. And the reason why they did that is he wanted me to see, and I didn't know this till after, how available I was to people.
Mm.
And I found out really fast. Some people wanted nothing to do with me. Some people wanted a hug because something that's happened. They wanted another hug when they came out. I was only in there for an hour. But once I was out there, I'm like, I could do this for another hour. Right. So that was a lesson of how available I am and how I show up. Right. And so sometimes we just need to do an actual exercise. Right. So we can really feel it and take it in and go, wow, that was really awakening for me.
Mm-hmm. So in these, if fear is overtaking you, uncertainty is overtaking you, it is, I think this exercise is, as you mentioned, Karen, is really helpful of what is the story I'm believing to be true right now. Reminds me, some of Byron Katie's, the work. I think that's excellent framework for people to ask. And when we ask ourselves questions, when the brain is emotional, we are able to activate the prefrontal cortex and the smarter part of our brain that can find answers. And so when we find ourselves in this, I think especially if you're leading an organization, we need somebody who can be the calm in the storm that can double down on what we can control in the midst of uncontrollables. And I think to really reflect on the story that we're carrying forward, because the story becomes our reality.
Yep.
And so that deeper inner look is, it's worth doing. If we aren't owning our stories, we become a part of someone else's, and AKA it's also ours. We just don't know it.
Yeah. We've just adopted it basically along the way.
Yes.
It's the perceiving self of us, which is our identity, our ego, all those things, right? So, you do have to stop. And that's the beauty of the pause, is just to stop and go, where's my thinking coming from?
How can people tell us a little bit about what you're up to, how people are working with you, and then how they can get connected to you?
Yeah. So people are finding me from all different areas, mostly social media, word of mouth from my clients, and so it's like, oh, I need you to work with this person, or oh, I need to, and so they can go to my website at karenbartholomew.com. And there is actually all over the website, book a clarity call for 15 minutes. And sometimes, 15 minutes is all they need, right? And sometimes I'm not the right coach, and then we refer them to other people like yourself. So they can find me there. Social media, it's just Karen Bartholomew. I made it very easy for people to find me. And yeah, that's where they can find me. But most people find me from mostly word of mouth and social media clips and other podcasts as well.
Great. And it's one-on-one coaching, group coaching, retreats. Tell us all the ways that you're working with people.
So there's one-on-one coaching, that's about a 6 month, 6 months, and we do 3-month sessions basically. So I think 6 months, if someone really wants to do a lot of work, it's a 6 months. Sometimes we do it in 3. There's group coaching, which is available. It's usually 4 people to me, and it's every week for it's 12 weeks actually. And so it's for 1 hour. Then we also have retreats, every 2 times a year we do retreats. We have one coming up, mostly in Sonoma, basically. And so that's for 15 women only. It's a very private space for people to get really vulnerable and authentic. And so those people really become bonded. And so taking those retreats across the United States, basically, so we can build a community of women. My dream is 1,000 women in this community. And so the community will just keep going. So it's kind of more like a movement. Yeah. And it's it's women entrepreneurs, women in corporate. I was in corporate America before. And so it's a lot of culture stuff, a lot of leadership stuff, and a lot of, taking a pause,
Mm.
which is the foundation of all of it. So just, that's where people can find me. So, and I love what I do. And I love seeing people move from just a baby step from point A to point B, and like how it's just changing people in their lives just because of the work that they're doing.
I love that you're doing retreats. I mean, I think in the Desiree Garcia, who's been a contributor on the podcast in the past, and myself, we have seen the value in women just don't always have a safe space to connect to their femininity, because especially in the corporate world or an entrepreneurial world, we really lean in more into our masculine energy to like get shit done.
Right.
And, and
Right.
it's very healing to be able to be around a safe space of women. I love that you do that. It is so healing. And, and to have community, what a gift. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining us.
So welcome.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways and what you can do to incorporate them. So number 1, I think it's important that we are able to be confident in knowing our story. Where do we want to go? What are those hurdles? I think if we are experiencing something we don't like, I really liked, Karen, how you mentioned there's all of this possibility. And I think it's helpful if we have that clarity of like, what do I want this story to be instead? If I'm in this story I do not like, I feel like I'm at the mercy of others, what can I do? Which leads me to number 2. When you're in that place, we have a choice. I love how Karen phrased the uncertainty versus possibility. What are we buying into? And then lastly, this personal histories exercise, or this personal exercise, you could do it for your childhood, like Karen mentioned. We could do it for any aspect of our life. But I think if we are able to reflect back and find those patterns, we can also find the stories. And the stories are what make our lives a reality. What we are believing is true, we make true. So what a gift, those 3 takeaways. I hope that you all do something with it.
Thank you for listening to the Conscious Habit Podcast. We would be so grateful if you could help us spread this conscious message by liking, rating, reviewing, and sharing our podcast. And we have an invitation just for you. We're building a community of like-minded, like-hearted people, where you will be the first to be notified about live events that we're doing. Every week we go live and have conscious conversations. We're doing live podcasting, and we are sharing conscious content in this community. You can join us by heading over to our website, theconscioushabit.com, and find community under the resources tab or here in the show notes.